And even if Steph's not hitting his shots, and even if the team's not hitting his shots, the one thing that they can do is that they can run. And the Boston Celtics couldn't run with the Golden State Warriors last.
Hello and welcome to the Tuesday, June 14th edition of the TV on Basketball podcast with your host, TV. Hope you're having a fantastic day and thank you for clicking on to watch or listen to today's episode. Before we start, I do have to plug my other platforms. Remember to follow at TV on Basketball on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for updates on the podcast and for other great content. If you're on YouTube, remember to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. And for my podcast listeners, remember to subscribe and leave a review if you're on Apple. And for my Spotify, Anchor, or Podbean listeners, just continue to show your support in any way possible. That would be highly, highly appreciated. We have an awesome show lined up for you today. We're going to be talking all about the finals, Game 4, Game 5, what has happened, and also previewing Game 6, as well as sprinkling in some possible trade rumors we're going to be discussing here on the show today. Should be really good. But today, I have on a new guest, the first-time guest on the show. We have Marcus from the Go Talk podcast with Marcus. What's up, man? Welcome to the show.
What's up, man? It's nice to be on here for the first time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. I was just on the show yesterday. If you want to see like my thoughts and like feelings about my preview for Game 5, and let's be honest, we both had the same feeling. It both came true yesterday. Really, really good episode. So definitely go check that out. And I've been on a couple of shows with Marcus, also on the This Just In podcast. So I know he knows how to talk ball. That's why we brought him on, and we're gonna be discussing a lot about Game 5, especially because one team is away from the NBA from winning the NBA championship, and we're going to discuss all about that in today's episode. So yeah, Marcus, thank you again for coming on. Are you ready to get into this Game 5 review?
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, let's get right into it. Because the Golden State Warriors, after being down 2-1 in the series, are the first team to actually take down the Boston Celtics in back-to-back games in the finals, taking the 3-2 series lead. And it wasn't Steph Curry. It wasn't Steph Curry who had a measly 15 points in this game, struggled from the field, but it was the other people that stepped up, the Klay Thompsons, the Andrew Wiggins. Those type of guys really stepped up in tonight's game. I'm going to start with you, Marcus. How were the Warriors able to get this win in spite of Steph Curry's bad performance?
Well, through about 75% of the game, I was preparing to praise Draymond Green for having a good game, but then he fouled out and became the first person in a long time to foul out of 3 separate NBA Finals games. But it has to this starts and ends with Andrew Wiggins, and it's really not that close. Steph Curry struggled from the field. That's an understatement. He had 16 points.
16.
Was 7 of 22 from the field. Didn't hit a 3. That's the first time in 132 playoff games and the first time in 233 basketball games that Steph Curry went over from the 3-point line. But it didn't matter because Andrew Wiggins had 26 and 13. Definitely played the best game of his life, really, but also like Gary Payton. And I think Gary Payton's impact kind of goes unnoticed. He had 15 points in 26 minutes with 6 of 8 from the field. He had a plus 16 box minus, and we talked a lot about box minus on my show yesterday and how sometimes it can be overinflated, but he led all players on both teams with a plus 16. And to think about Gary Payton, who just a couple weeks ago, maybe almost a month ago now, had a broken elbow in that Memphis Grizzlies series. Yeah. And to go from that to being playing in the finals and putting his stamp on the finals is impressive. I talk all the time about how Gary Payton's their best perimeter defender. He showed that. But again, this starts and stops with Andrew Wiggins. We talk a lot about the Boston Celtics, how when JT can't get going, they've always got Jaylen Brown, and how that's usually enough. Well, with the Warriors, Klay Thompson's been struggling a lot this series. No, he did have a good game last night. I think he had about 21 points. Andrew Wiggins stepped up, and I've been saying all series that as it stands right now, if there's any person that deserves the Finals MVP outside of Steph Curry, it's Andrew Wiggins, because he's been the most consistent player. He's been very consistent. He's given you about 15 points all throughout the course of these finals. He's given you at least 6 or 7 rebounds throughout the course of these finals. Last night, he gave you 13. He's been incredible, was incredible offensively, and was definitely incredible defensively. So we talked a lot about game 1, how Jason Tatum not playing well, and the others stepped up for Boston. Well, Steph Curry didn't play well here in game 5, and Andrew Wiggins and the others stepped up for Golden State, and that's why the Golden State Warriors are the first team since January to beat the Boston Celtics in back-to-back games. That is huge, going back to Boston for game 6.
100%. Like you said, it starts and finishes with Andrew Wiggins. And the funny thing is about this game is that the Celtics had a similar game like this in game one. Jason Tatum did not play well, like you mentioned, in game one. Then you got the contributions from Smart, Derek White, Al Horford. I mean, that was the Al Horford game. That's what we remember that game as. And in game five, we're gonna remember this game as the Andrew Wiggins game, especially if the Warriors go on to win this series. Andrew Wiggins has definitely had an up and down career for sure. Number one overall pick for the Minnesota Timberwolves, for the Cleveland Cavaliers, shipped off right away to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and started off great, rookie of the year, but he always felt like he had this talent, but there was no effort, no drive to kind of match what he was his talent, and that really didn't make him into like a top 20, top 10 player that we all expected him to be. Now he moves on to Golden State, is in a lesser role for sure, but he is thriving in that role. I mean, it's crazy where a change of scenery where from a team that has no intention of winning, as the Minnesota Timberwolves have been in the past, go on to a championship contender and your career could just turn on its head just like that. I mean, when look at Andrew Wiggins' career, especially in his time in Golden State, I mean, what has been the biggest reason why he has been so successful there?
It's been that he hasn't had any pressure. This is Steph's team. This is Clay's team. This is Draymond's team. No one cares about Andrew Wiggins as far as being productive on a consistent basis. Like Andrew Wiggins has a bad game. Oh, yeah, well, it's Andrew Wiggins. He's the third or fourth option. I think what we saw in Minnesota was he was young, right? He got drafted number one overall to Cleveland, got shipped immediately to Minnesota for that Kevin Love trade that brought Kevin Love to Cleveland with LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. And he was kind of thrusted into this role that I don't think he was quite ready for. He only played one season in Kansas, and it was good enough to give him the number one overall pick, but he was by no stretch of the imagination ready to be the number one option or really the number two option, right? So he goes around and then finally he ends up in Golden State and the D'Angelo Russell trade was that 2 years ago, and he's thriving. Right, you don't think about Andrew Wiggins first or second. You don't really have to think about him third sometimes, depending on what's going on with Draymond Green, if he's actually being productive, right? And Draymond Green has thrived in that to the point now where I think that Draymond Green's the third best player on this team. I think you look at Steph Curry, you look at Klay Thompson, and now you're looking at Andrew Wiggins as an imminent threat. Obviously, you have to respect Draymond for what he's worth as far as his playmaking ability and his ability to fuel the offense and his defensive prowess. Although I've said several times he is not the level that he was as far as being a defensive player of the year, but he is still a good defender, right? But he's not productive offensively. He's fouled out of the game. He's fouled out of 3 of these NBA Finals games. He, if I'm not mistaken, overall, has a box plus minus in this playoff series somewhere around 10, which, if you're the third best player on the team, isn't good. If we're just being honest, that's not good. So Andrew Wiggins has stepped up. He's been crucial, but again, he's just the epitome of consistency. And I think when you look at Andrew Wiggins, he has the effort, but it's also like he is here and there's no pressure on him. And because there's no pressure on Andrew, he gets to go out and just be Andrew Wiggins. He gets to go out and just play his game of basketball, and it works. I say all the time, he's the only guy that you can rely on offensively and defensively on this basketball team, and he showed that a lot in Game 5.
Yeah, 100%. 26 points, 13 rebounds. He did make a three. Like him and Steph combined for over 15 from three. And surprisingly, they were still able to win this game. But it was him literally making quick decisions, him attacking the rim. I mean, there was a point in the beginning of that fourth quarter where you were kind of scared for the Golden State Warriors because Steph usually has his early rest in the fourth quarter, but Andrew Wiggins literally, I think it was the first or second possession, just took it straight to the rim and finished with a layup. He didn't score basically really in that third quarter. So when you came out and was just right aggressive in that fourth quarter, you could tell that the tide was changing towards the Golden State Warriors, especially after giving up that lead. The Boston Celtics climbing back into that third quarter. He really set the tone. And when Steph Curry really couldn't get a shot going, they went to Andrew Wiggins late in this game. I don't think that people really saw this coming, but Wiggins, his confidence is an all-time high right now. And when he has all his players around him, giving him all his praise and all that, and he doesn't have the pressure like he was a number one or number two option there in Minnesota, he is absolutely thriving. And just going back to this game in general, like I said, Wiggins definitely the best player. You mentioned Gary Payton as well. This guy gave you some really good minutes, especially because Kevon Looney early in that game, early foul trouble, like you said as well. Draymond Green fouled out again. He fouled out again in this playoffs, in this final series. But he played some center minutes. He was actually really good in those minutes as well. And even though Steph Curry had a bad game, I have to give him a round of applause because even though he wasn't great, he's Steph Curry. The gravity is going to go towards him, and that still opens up the game for so many other players. He just was seen as a threat. So as long as he's out on the court, they have to respect him, and that meant good play from Jordan Poole, especially end of the third quarter going into the fourth quarter. Clay Thompson had a good game, and of course Wiggins had probably the best game, especially when it comes to situation and like the gravity of the game. This is probably the best game of his career, especially being in the NBA Finals. But going to the Boston Celtics side of things, I mean, you hold Steph Curry to 16 points in this game and 17 for 22 shooting. He doesn't hit a three for the first time since 2018.
Yep.
But they still lost this game. They only finished with 94 points. I mean, they went away from their usual game plan, which was, let just guard everyone else, let Steph Curry beat you. They switched it up in this game, and it really bit them in the back, especially because they couldn't get their own offense going. But Marcus, going back to you, there's quite a number of problems with the Celtics, but what would you like point to as their biggest problem as to why they have lost these last two games?
First of all, the Celtics led last night for all of 5 minutes and some change. Like
Yeah,
this was the score. While it was a 10-point game, this was Golden State's game all the
yes,
way. And we talked yesterday about how the only way that the Boston Celtics would legitimately have a chance was if they won the third quarter. And you said that that's impossible. And I agree with you. Well, the Boston Celtics won the third quarter last night. They outscored the
yeah,
Golden State Warriors 35-24. But here's the thing, and I think this is the issue, is when you look at the Boston Celtics, right? The Boston Celtics are all about adjustments, and I think they made too rash of an adjustment. Steph Curry in the crucial game 4 goes out. He drops 43 and 10, and Boston Celtics are face guarding Steph Curry at half court for the entire game. Which, hey, stop him how you got to stop him, right? But in doing so, that's too rash of a change because you've dedicated all your attention to Steph Curry. A lot of the things we saw was just a whole bunch of backdoor cuts to Gary Payton, to Otto Porter, to Andrew Wiggins, namely to like it was literally just Steph and Draymond Green finding all these backdoor cuts down low in the lane. And so then when it's time for you to start stepping up defensively in the paint, well, that's when Andrew Wiggins is hitting his three. That's when Klay started hitting his threes. Klay was 5 of 11 last night from the 3-point range. You saw Otto Porter hit some threes. This is how the Golden State Warriors played basketball. They played basketball inside out, and that worked. You cannot. The Celtics struggle with inside out basketball. What usually happens is the Celtics, because they're so stout down low defensively with Robert Williams and Al Horford, they force you to shoot the ball. Well, Golden State said, well, listen, we're just going to start attacking you early since Steph terrified the Celtics so much in game 4 that the Celtics didn't want to take a single eye off of Steph Curry the entire game. And that's why we were able to see Andrew Wiggins go off for such an amazing game, 26 and 13. The other thing too, though, and this is more important, is there was a stretch of time when the Boston Celtics and the Golden State Warriors combined missed 18 straight threes. It was just straight misses from downtown. And I think what happened is Boston got a little bit intimidated. Boston looked up at the score and they realized we're down a lot. And instead of sticking to their brand of basketball, the physical, down low, mid-range, and post-up paint offense, they were trying to beat the Warriors at the Warriors' own game, which is what they found success with in game 1. And you got to understand, you're not going to beat the Warriors the same way twice. It's just not going to happen, especially in the exact same series. Jason Tatum off to a rocky start. In fact, I think there was a graphic at one point, and Jason Tatum had at one point in the game or in the course of this series as many 2-point field goals made as he did 3-point field goals made as he did turnovers. And it was all 14, right? And then, of course, the big one is the Boston Celtics can't hold on to the ball to save their lives. 100%. Turnover after turnover. I believe that was 18 turnovers last night, which is now their 5th time this playoffs when they've had at least 18 turnovers. They had one earlier in this playoffs. They had, or in this series, I mean, they had 19. They've had 2 other games they had 18, and they had one game they had 24 against the Heat. The Boston Celtics cannot hold on to the basketball, and that's really the major problem, because a lot of these they're not dead ball turnovers. These are live ball turnovers that are turning into quick points on the other end for the Golden State Warriors. And even if Steph's not hitting his shots, and even if the team's not hitting his shots, the one thing that they can do is that they can run. And the Boston Celtics couldn't run with the Golden State Warriors last night. It started to look like a track meet, but Boston made it close. But again, those turnovers, they once again just led to the undoing of the Boston Celtics last night. I don't remember the exact number. I believe it was I'm trying to think. I believe it was 18 turnovers for Boston and 22 points off turnovers for Golden State. Golden State had 6 turnovers and Boston had 9 points off those 6 turnovers. That's not a recipe for success. You can't turn the ball over a lot and also not force turnovers on the other end. That's the major problem.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I mentioned yesterday on your episode, like when you're asking about X factors for this game, I said it was going to be Marcus Smart because I thought, you know what, the other guys in this series weren't killing you as much as Steph Curry did. You need Marcus Smart like on him 24/7, and that was a game plan. I mean, we mentioned it. So, like once he crossed half court, there's a body right there, right on Stephen Curry. Like he didn't leave. Whoever was guarding him, he never left their sight. I think the defense wasn't the problem. You in more times than not, if Wiggins is scoring 26 points, Clay's scoring 21, and you hold Steph Curry to 16, that's a success because you're taking away the number one guy on that team. My biggest concern with the Boston Celtics is again the turnovers leading to points on the other end. I mean, 18 turnovers again in this playoffs. The magic number for them is 15. 15 turnovers or less. They are like what I think they're like. They're like 7 or 8 games over 500. When they have 15 turnovers or more in these playoffs, they are 2-7 now, 2-8. They lose. The turnovers literally cost them these games. And when you're not getting like those shots up and you're giving Warriors extra opportunities, you're just not gonna win that way. And the defense, I think, was fine. Like I said, like them holding Steph Curry, I think that's fine. But the fourth quarter offense where they keep turning the ball over, they for some reason think that threes are the only option for them, even though that, like you said, that is not their game. It's what cost them. I mean, before garbage time, they only scored 3 field goals in the fourth quarter. That's just unacceptable for a team who is in the NBA Finals. And honestly, like just the difference, like their offense looks when they win and when they lose, it's absolutely crazy. And I want to put up this one stat because I think this is absolutely like crazy, like in terms of the whole finals. When the Celtics win, their offensive efficiency rating is 30 points per 100 possessions better in wins compared to losses. 125.5 per 100 possessions in wins, 95.5 in losses. That is a massive difference. And again, that's turnovers. That is them just settling for shots, trying to, like you said, trying to beat the Warriors at their own game.
Yep.
They're not going to win that way. And I know this is a young team and stuff like that, but they at times, especially in yesterday's game, I feel like they were doing too much. Marcus Smart, like especially when the Warriors were going on that run in the fourth quarter, was like, you know what, it's my turn to take over this game. And then he got a turnover. He got that offensive foul where Jordan Poole absolutely baited him into that elbow and stuff like that. I mean, he got a technical foul. These type of like little extracurricular things are what is like leading Boston like away, like costing them these games. And final point. I mean, this Steph Curry game, like you should be winning this if this is like the type of score the Warriors are gonna have. But the Boston Celtics offense, especially late in that game, is just not good enough to like even match that, which is absolutely crazy, especially when you have players like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, like great one-on-one scorers. Yep. They should be executing a lot better, 100%. But I mean, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, this is the Boston Celtics. They're in an interesting spot here. I mean, again, you go 14-1 since January after a loss. They haven't been in a spot where they've just lost back-to-backs. I don't know. I think, granted, Jason, this would be their third elimination game coming up in Game 6, but Jason Tatum has been in a lot of elimination games as well. In fact, heading into this next elimination game, which I think will be the 5th of his career, he's only lost the 6th of his career. Excuse me. He's lost one elimination game. That was to LeBron James.
That's his rookie year, right? Rookie year.
Yeah, his rookie year. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think that Game 6 means so much more because the chances are we're gonna see Game 6 Clay.
It's almost inevitable.
It's almost inevitable you get a Game 6 Clay. Steph Curry's the greatest shooter of all time. He very rarely has back-to-back shooting nights where he's just looking terrible. So you can't expect him to go for 16 points again on what is it, Thursday, and 0 for 9 from the 3 especially. So that's going to be something that you should be looking at. But you're also at home in an elimination game in the NBA Finals. There's a lot of pressure on the Boston Celtics to force a 7th game. It'll be interesting to see if it's too much pressure.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think like the pressure, especially throughout this playoffs, has gone to them. There's a reason they're a better road team than home team. I just feel like they feel too much pressure with the bright lights shining at them at home. It should be a tough place to play, especially because it's the TD Garden, one of the most rowdiest fan bases in the entire league. But it seems like they have to come up short. But like you said, Jason Tatum and the Celtics are really good in these elimination game scenarios. Let's see if they can be able to do it come Game 6.
And LeBron James remains the only guy since
Yeah.
Jason Tatum's been on the team to win an elimination game in Boston. So there's a little
Yeah.
bit of hope for you there, but again,
Yeah.
LeBron James is one of one. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. But now we're going on to game 7. I'm going to game 6. I mean, the bright lights are on you. Another key stat here: the Warriors in their last 2 series, when it comes to closing out a series on the road, they have lost one game in the last 2 series. I mean, if you remember the Dallas Mavericks, they gave up the game 4 in a game against, and then against the Memphis Grizzlies, they gave up game 5, and the same thing in game 4 versus the Denver Nuggets, they gave up the closeout game on the road. So again, Boston Celtics, this is a little bit of hope for you, but when it comes to game 6, preview predictions, do you think the Boston Celtics have what it takes to make the adjustments and force a game 7 back at Chase Center?
No, I don't.
No.
And it's not because the Celtics aren't good, or even because I think the Warriors are that much better. We talked about it yesterday on the show, and just for those, I don't know if you've been just on your show, but I think it's something worth mentioning, right? I think sometimes we forget about who the betting favorites are and who the actual favorites are.
Yeah.
The betting favorites are the Golden State Warriors in this. You look at all the sports books everywhere, the betting favorites are the Golden State Warriors. If you look at just actually basketball, the Boston Celtics are the favorites in this series. And even after Steph and the Warriors won in game 4, I believe Boston still had a 71% chance of winning this series. Obviously, that number has dropped now, given that they're down 3-2. I don't know what that number is exactly. I didn't check before I came on the show, so my apologies for that. But the Boston Celtics are the favorites in this series. But again, it's one thing to lose back-to-backs during the regular season. It's a completely different thing to lose back-to-back games in a playoff series. And as we mentioned, the Boston Celtics have yet to lose back-to-backs in a playoff series until last night, until game 4 and game 5.
Yeah.
That's going to be important. I had the Warriors in 6, so I'm sticking with that pick. I think the Warriors get the job done on the road, and I feel like I just think it's going to be too much for Boston. I think there's going to be too much pressure. This is a home game, and generally speaking, the role players do play better at home than they do on the road, and all that's true. But like we talked about yesterday on my show, Jason Tatum has got to play better basketball. He has to. I understand he's 24 years old. I understand this is his first time, but Jason Tatum has to play better basketball. Now, once again, Jason Tatum doesn't have bad back-to-back games. He did finish with 27 points last night, which led all scorers. He had 27 and 10, shot 50% from the field, shot 56% from 3. But he got off to a very, very, very slow start. Jason Tatum got off to an extremely slow start. Jason Tatum has to come out playing lights out.
Yes. Yeah.
We can't keep doing this thing with the Boston Celtics where Jason Tatum and or Jaylen Brown comes off to a slow start and now they're clawing. You can't, because of if the Golden State Warriors smell blood in the water, they're coming for you. And again, last night was the first time all series that the Golden State Warriors lost the third quarter. I don't know if the Golden State Warriors are going to lose the third quarter again. And more importantly, I don't think the Golden State Warriors have lost more than 3 good third quarters in this entire playoff run. I think they lost the third quarter when they got blown out by Memphis. They lost the third quarter in that one game they lost to Dallas, and then they lost the third quarter last night. And despite losing in the third quarter last night, they still won the game. I don't know if you can beat Golden State in the third quarter again. It's not, the third quarter is important, but the first quarter is even more important. Boston's got to get control of this game like they did in game 3, or we could be crowning NBA champions on Thursday.
Yeah, the Boston Celtics, another key stat here. The last time they were the last 9 games that they were in clutch time, they are 2-7. So whenever the Boston Celtics are in that position, 5 minutes left, under 5 points, under a 5-point game, they tend to lose. And that is just it just shows what the Boston Celtics offense is late in that game. I mean, what is it? It's all one-on-ones and stuff like that. They have to be better prepared. And honestly, for them to even win this, to force a game 7, I think they have to go straight for the throat early on. They have to make it so the Golden State Warriors don't have a chance to come back.
What we saw in game 7 against Miami, that needs to be the game plan in game 6 here against Boston, against Golden State, because yes, Golden State's the second-ranked defensive team as far as efficiency is concerned. They hold opponents to 100.6 points per 100 possessions in the postseason or in the regular season. But Miami's a much more physical team. And if you can out physical a physical team, you can definitely out physical a team that's not physical at all. So whatever worked for them in that game 7, they need to go back and watch that game 7 tip against Miami, because that needs to happen, because we saw them jump out to multiple double-digit leads. We saw them dwindle down, but Miami just didn't have enough to come back in the end, primarily because they only had Jimmy Butler. But that has to be the game plan. We need to see Game 7 against Miami, Boston here in Game 6. Or like I said, we're crowning NBA champions in Boston, and it'll be Golden State Warriors for the fourth time in 8 years.
Yes, 100%. They have to get off to a hot start. They were. I think they had like 4 points until like they had 4 points like in the first quarter until like the 4-minute mark. I mean, it took them forever to get their offense going. They have to get up to a hot start. They have to be a lot, and I mean a lot more physical than the Golden State Warriors. And one thing for the Boston Celtics too, and I think we didn't mention this in this episode in the last game, they have to hit free throws. They have to hit free throws. Jason Tatum went 2 for 6, and 2 of those tried to the free throw line, he missed both.
Yeah,
like it's unacceptable for a team to go like under 70% from the free throw line, especially in a finals game. Like that is just a recipe for disaster for a team. They have to do better with the free throws. And last but not least, they need to have like the Steph Curry game in Game 4. You need that from either Jaylen Brown or more specifically, you need that from Jason Tatum in Game 6.
If this isn't, I love Jaylen Brown. I think Jaylen Brown's incredible. If this isn't the Jason Tatum game, the Boston Celtics are going to lose this series. They're going to lose on Thursday.
Yeah, this has to.
I love Jaylen Brown. I think Jaylen Brown's fantastic. If this is not the Jason Tatum game, if Jason Tatum is not playing the best that we know that Jason Tatum can play, the Boston Celtics are going to lose in Game 6. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, 100%. We need that. Like, we need to have that finals moment that we've been waiting for Jason Tatum. It has to happen in Game 6. They have to force. They need that in order to force a Game 7. And they're at home. This is something that will possibly get Jason Tatum over the hump to be, that top 10 player that we've been waiting to see from him. If he needs that type of performance to save their series and in order for them to even have a chance to win this one. But yeah, final prediction. I'm going to say that the Golden State Warriors, actually, you know what? I'm actually going to flip it now. I'm going to take the Boston Celtics to win this. My prediction before the series, I know we were both on Justin's podcast. I said Warriors in 7. I'm going to stick to that. I think the Boston Celtics will, in fact, make the adjustments, win this game, and force a Game 7. But final prediction from you, Marcus. Who do you got winning?
I've been Warriors in 6 from the get-go. And after losing Game 1, wasn't looking that good. They bounced back with the back-to-backs, which is important. I've been saying that the team that wins back-to-back games first is a team that's going to win this series. And what I meant by that is whoever wins back-to-back is going to probably close out and get that third one. And here we are, the Golden State Warriors have a chance to get that third one. And like I said earlier, become NBA champion for the fourth time in 8 years, but more specifically, for the fourth time in 6 attempts of making it to the NBA Finals. Yes. The Golden State Warriors are going to be NBA champions, which is even more incredible when you think about the fact that they missed 2 years off. And as soon as they get back healthy, they're back in the NBA Finals. They got a chance to win it all. And I'm going with the Warriors in 6.
It actually is incredible if you really do think about it, especially because there have been 3 iterations of the Warriors that even has been here. The pre-KD Warriors, the KD Warriors, and now the post-KD Warriors, where they're honestly, let's be honest, they're bridging the gap between the Warriors now and the future, especially with like people like Kuminga, Moody, Wiseman, like waiting on the wings. The way that they're able to still keep these draft picks, didn't feel pressure from the media to trade away all those other guys in order to get the 4th star, if you want to say that. They're still able to do it. It's highly impressive that they're back in this position, 1 game away from winning the NBA Finals. But before we head out, before we finish off this episode, I said earlier that we're going to be talking about possible trade scenarios for 5 players. So basically, what in this segment, what we're going to do, I have 5 players here. I'm going to present them to Marcus. Just give me a percentage of how likely it is for them to be traded this offseason. And all these 5 guys have a bunch of trade rumors going around for them right now. So let's get right into it. First player I'm going to give to you, Marcus, OG Anunoby. There have been some trade rumors about him being settled in Toronto. The Trailblazers being potential candidates, the Brooklyn Nets, the Golden State Warriors. What percentage do you give for a possible OG Anunoby trade this offseason?
Say about 50, 60. It really just depends on who the suitor is. OG Anunoby is talented, but it just really depends on what Toronto views as his value and then what other teams view as his value. I know Portland's surrounded in a lot of these because it's Portland and it's Dame Lillard. I could see him going to Portland. I could see him going to LA maybe if he ends up in the Lakers uniform. I think those are probably the 2 teams that are eyeing him the most.
Yeah, as a Raptor fan, I do have a little bit of bias. I do think it's going to be around 25%, just because the Masai Ujiri isn't like the type of guy to like go off the bench, like go off the wagon so early, like especially in this type of like retooling step of stage for the Toronto Raptors. I think he's going to wait it out. If anything, OG Anunoby trade will be more likely at the next offseason. But for this offseason, I think Masai will definitely stay put. I think honestly the best place for him would be the Golden State Warriors if they want to, like, if they're able to, package maybe a James Wiseman, Moody, maybe a couple picks. But if anything, I do think he will still remain with the Toronto Raptors this season. Next player we have here is Bradley Beal. Bradley
Oh,
Beal,
zero.
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 You're gonna 0% for Bradley
Zero.
Beal.
Just off the simple fact that like Bradley Beal is the epitome of loyalty, and while I love to see Brad leave Washington and go play elsewhere and win a championship, because I think he deserves it, I would be shocked if he does at this point, given how many times he stayed despite all the trade rumors. Now, if he does get traded, I think the destination would be Miami, and I think that's the only destination. A couple years ago, we're talking about maybe the Lakers, but now I really think it's Miami, and if it's not Miami, then Brad will stay in DC. And that's another situation where, look, we saw that Miami wanted to hold on to Tyler Hero and those guys in the James Harden trade, which I think would have been incredible if you can hold on to Tyler Hero and also bring in James Harden. But you're gonna have to give up to Tyler Hero to get Bradley Beal. Like, the Wizards know that. So if the Heat aren't going to give up Tyler Hero, I think that we're going to see Bradley Beal for a couple more years in DC.
Yeah, I have 10%. I mean, he's waited this long for that super duper max that he has been like waiting for like all these years. I think accepting his player option would suggest that a trade is incoming, but I don't think that's happening. I think he was trying to go straight for the bag. I give it a 10% chance, and literally the only place that he'll go to is Miami. But I'm holding a little bit of hope just because I really just want to see Beal out of Washington. It's been way too long over there, like you said. Next player we're going to be talking about, another two guard, but now we're heading to the West. Donovan Mitchell, the Utah Jazz, just fired Quinn Snyder. We're going to talk about his team in just a little bit later, but Marcus, Donovan Mitchell, what percentage do you have him being traded this offseason?
Well, I think it depends on what the Jazz value. If the Jazz value a championship, then zero, because you don't win a championship without Donovan Mitchell. I don't think there's no way in heck you're winning a championship in Utah without Donovan Mitchell, because he's the best player on the team. And he is more attractive as a free agent than Rudy Gobert. I think what it comes down to is who does Utah want to move on from? Do they want to move on from Donovan? Do they want to move on from Rudy? Both guys are going to be on the trade market. I know that. We've heard rumors about Rudy Gobert. We obviously hear rumors about Donovan Mitchell, tying him to Miami, but also tying him to the New York Knicks. I don't think he should go to New York. I think if Bradley Beal, or if Mitchell gets traded, he should be traded somewhere where he can win a championship, because that'll give Utah more bang for their buck as far as what they can get back. But it really just depends on what the Jazz value more, and more specifically, who the Jazz value more. And we'll see a lot of that, whether they value Rudy or Donovan Mitchell more. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I would give it at 40%. I think that the Jazz are like at the cusp of right now, thinking maybe we should just blow this whole thing up. I think that is honestly at this point, like getting rid of Quinn Snyder, I think you just get rid of this whole era of the Utah Jazz. I'm the type of guy to maybe start fresh. I know Donovan Mitchell is probably the more like juicy trade target there, so I'd probably give it 40%. But I think that he's still young enough where the Utah Jazz could convince themselves we could still build a team around him. Probably just get him like a better fit in terms of a defensive scheme and everything else. Again, like you mentioned, New York and Miami are basically the two options I have here as well for him to go out to. Next player, his teammate Rudy Gobert. We talked about how the Jazz are trying to move on from him, or trying to decide between them two. Marcus, what is his chance of leaving going Utah this offseason?
He should be gone, because I don't think Rudy Gobert is good. I don't think Rudy Gobert is conducive of a championship environment. But again, it really just all depends on who Utah values more. I would assume that Utah values Donovan Mitchell more, but you can never know for sure in the business that is the NBA. So that's another one we'll have to see. We could live in a world where they're both gone, honestly.
Yeah, that's something I think that honestly they should do. I have that 80%. I think that Gobert honestly like would fit in like several teams in the NBA. Likely the Dallas Mavericks, I think, is my number one place for him, just so like just because we've seen him get absolutely dominated on the interior by the Golden State Warriors, just as an option. Honestly, I think him and Luka Doncic can work very well together. But Gobert, honestly, more than anything, I think in terms of the fan base, in terms of Donovan Mitchell, in terms of that whole situation, he should be the one probably gone more likely than Donovan Mitchell. Then the last player here, DeAndre Ayton. Surprisingly, that Athletic article came out saying that the Suns are likely moving towards a sign trade for him, which is crazy because he was just the number one overall pick 4 years ago. And now they're and he's a restricted free agent, so it's crazy that the Suns want to ship him out. Marcus, what percentage do you give him of leaving the Phoenix Suns?
He's gone. He is as good as gone. For what, I don't know, but I don't see DeAndre Ayton playing for the Suns again. He's gone.
Yeah, his situation is just not getting better in Cleveland and Phoenix. We've seen like Monty Williams like have comments on him early on in the season. He played only 17 minutes in that closeout game versus the Dallas Mavericks, and you could tell that he was visibly frustrated out there on the sidelines. I think a lot of teams are willing to give up some assets for him, whether it's the Pistons, Spurs, or potentially the Charlotte Hornets. But at this point, if you're not getting 100% from him, if he doesn't like want to be in that environment, I think it's best to like trade him away and try to get whatever assets you can. It's just surprising that's going to end this early, especially for such a young player like him. But yeah, those are our thoughts on these trade possibilities this offseason. Let us know down below what you guys think, and also your thoughts on the NBA Finals. Do you think the Warriors are going to close it out in Game 6, or do you think the Boston Celtics are able to force a Game 7? But yeah, I think we reached the end of this episode. Marcus, thank you again for coming on. Let the people know where they could find you and all that good stuff.
GTP Marcus on everything: Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Go Talk with Marcus on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify. If you can't find me, you're not trying hard enough. I'm everywhere and it's obnoxious. And it's I truly enjoyed being on the show, and I'm sure this will be the first of many.
Yes, 100%. He was an awesome guest on the show. It was great being on him and other shows as well, especially his show. Again, check that out if you want to see my thoughts on Game 4 especially. But yeah, it was a great episode. Thank you, Marcus, for coming on. I'll have all of his links down in my link tree and also in the description of this video, so you can go check him out, because his content, whether it's basketball, whether it's football, he has great content over there. You should go definitely check him out. But this is again today's episode. Thank you guys for watching or listening. Remember to show love on all the podcast channels. Like, share, and subscribe if you're on YouTube, as well as hit the notification bell. And remember to follow at TV on Basketball on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for updates on the podcast and for more great content. I'll be back either on Friday to discuss the Warriors winning the championship, or if the Boston Celtics force Game 7. So be on the lookout for that. But also just remember to check out on all the social media stuff. I'm going to have daily content over there as well. But this is the end of today's episode. Thank you guys for all the support. Hope you have a fantastic day. This is Marcus. This is TV. We're signing out. Peace.
Thank you.